Now, we've talked so far in the session around fintech, around auditing, and around crypto assets. And I'm going to sort of pivot the conversation, as John said, to talk about beyond it. And I'm going to talk about energy. Why are we talking about energy? What are the applications? And then I'm going to go into a very pragmatic, practical example. So in the last 2 months, as John mentioned, I've been to no less than 3 conferences just focused on blockchain and energy, right? I've heard over 50 initiatives, collaborations, startups talking about this. And this isn't in Boston. This is in New York, in Houston, and in Berlin, where they had 800 people just around the world just focused on blockchain and energy. In 2016, there were about 14 deals. Maybe they raised around 9 million. But 2017, there were over 50 deals around the world. They've raised over 740 million focused on blockchain and energy. And in 2018, in the first quarter, 15 deals around 360 million. This area has really just sort of exploded in the last year. Now, most of those deals were in what they call the peer-to-peer or the retail energy space, around 23 of those. The big ones were Power Grid down in Australia. They raised around 34 million in an ICO. LO3, they're based in Brooklyn. They raised a Series A with Bramer and with Centrica. But the other sectors, green mining, smart homes, wholesale trading, energy certificates, are much smaller, but it's assumed to be growing very fast. But why is it that energy is an area that has had this explosion of interest, in addition to why everything is now blockchain all the time? There are some of the blockchain attributes we've talked about so far today that are very specifically helpful for the energy system at large. It's a distributed and permanent record. You can update it, you can't erase it. It's transparent and accountable. It provides security that is mathematically enforced, and it's efficient, right? It creates a unanimous shared record. You combine those characteristics that are core to this with the ability to work with lots of data and lots of information, and you combine that with smart contracts, and all of a sudden you're starting to get something that could be very helpful for some of the challenges in the energy sector. But why energy, right? Today, WTI is trading around $71, and that's despite all the issues that are going on and all the bombings. In other words, we're not seeing these enormous spikes in a barrel of oil. And at the same time, you've got the cost of solar that was maybe $100 per watt in the 70s and 80s. It's less than 40 cents now. It's like 37 cents a watt. So you have huge pressure on costs and efficiency. And at the same time in energy, you've got this pressure on what I would call the 4 Ds. You've got a pressure to decarbonize because of climate. You have a pressure of democratization because of the way that energy is being redistributed. You have the pressure for digitalization. All these new processes that are going on are affecting across the energy system. And you have a pressure, and you have what I would call densification. Cities, new forms of mobility, different ways for things to work together that affect the entire energy system. The Chief Digital Innovation Officer at BP said it very well. She said, look, there are 5 technologies I track really closely right now. I track quantum computing. I track AI. I track autonomous machines, which wasn't a phrase I was used to using, but I think includes the world of 3G as well as the world of robotics. I track advanced digitalization, which means areas like predictive analytics. And I track blockchain. And why do I do that at BP? She does it for really, she said, 3 reasons. One is to see how can I do business better internally and with partners. Secondly, what are the opportunities that maybe hadn't been there before but are starting to emerge now? And bottom line, how do I make sure I'm the disruptee, not the disruptor or disrupted? Blockchain, she identified as saying, could have an absolutely transformational effect on this, providing real solutions to real pragmatic problems. And she said that even within the context, you realize, John, that that's really distracting. Just saying. Even with the whole context around blockchain and all the hype. So I'm going to give a very pragmatic example. I was a banker for around 20 years, and one of the first jobs I had was lending to commodity traders. And at that time in the 80s, you had what they called daisy chains, right? The oil would be drilled in Nigeria, but by the time it arrived in Texas, it would trade like 18 times. This is a day when, to get two fax machines to talk to each other, one went on 20 minutes and one went on 10 minutes, and getting all those documents was just a nightmare. But that thing would still trade a huge number of times. Bring that forward 30, 40 years, some of those issues still remain. There's a company called Trafigura. They're one of the world's largest traders in commodities on the physical side. That means they don't trade on the exchanges. They trade actual barrels of crude that has to go from point A to point B. In the abstract, their problem is that they need market participants to be able to reconcile so you can move that crude oil from point A to point B. In very specific, in real terms, the question is, have any of you guys actually tried to reconcile a 30-page invoice that includes specifics around where, quality, oil, details, dates, times? It's really painful, right? That process of physical absolute trading is painful. The way it happens now, you have a buyer, you have a seller, and they email back and forth, right? They say, here's a possible price, here's a counterbond, okay, I'm done, yes, I'm confirmed. Then they both have to go back down to the pipeline, confirm as well. And then they have to go to the bank and confirm so the bank can finance it. And then, of course, you have your auditors who have to confirm that the trade was done. That's a lot of emails. What the pilot is that they're trying to put in place is to put it on a blockchain. And they realize that this is a global, huge market. So Trafigura is doing that for the US crude market. A small number of players, they all know each other, their mechanisms are in place, and they're cautiously optimistic that the actual savings of this will be significant enough that it'll actually get traction and start to expand. What are those savings? It facilitates reconciliation. It allows easier invoicing. It adds a layer where financing starts to become something that happens faster, easier, and more efficiently. And overall, it speeds up the market. It provides the liquidity that we talked about before. So let me close by saying, when we look at the world of blockchain and AI, I think it's important to also look beyond the fintech, beyond the abstract, to the real. If we assume that what the internet did for us is reduce the cost of exchanging information to effectively zero, what these technologies can do is reduce the cost of exchanging physical assets, the real world, and value to a dramatically lower level. If you add blockchain and AI, what's the impact going to be on a market like Trafigura is looking at, crude oil? If you combine blockchain and 3D printing, what does that mean if you run a refinery? What if the blockchain has all the records for all the maintenance for all your parts, and your printer has all the specs on what you print? All of a sudden, predictive analytics and your supply chain get compressed in a way you've never seen. And finally, the whole sort of concept of blockchain plus AI plus human, we're just at the beginning of the journey. We can't even switch our mindset yet to its applications. But these kind of very early applications that you're seeing in markets like energy give you hope and thoughts and challenges going forward. Thank you very much.